Hi, and welcome to an episode of the Jet Rails podcast. I'm Robert Rand, your host. We're going to be talking today all about knowledge bases and getting information out there to customers in the e-commerce world. Top to bottom, we'll try to take a little bit of a holistic view. With me today, we've got Matt from the Guru team. And Matt, would you do us the
Yeah.
honor of introducing yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Robert. I'm Matt Romans with the Guru team. I've been with Guru for about, I guess it'll be 3 years in November, which I guess is, a long time for a startup. I am currently the manager of the scalable customer success team. We work with our more SMB businesses. But I came to Guru as a CSM, not knowing anything about what being a CSM really meant. I had a training background. I worked for a nonprofit that was onboarding the product and really quickly saw a need for like, hey, this is great. And then found out that CSM was a role, found out that that Guru was actually in Philly as well. And that's how I came to the team.
That's true. So you came from the user side and saw a cool tech company and jumped on board. Look, it's so interesting that in any form of tech, I think that most of what people learn is trial by fire. That they cut their teeth, as they say, for some tech company or somewhere in the industry, and they keep growing and growing from there. So, this stuff changes so fast that there's just so many roles that you could have really been properly educated about in college or anywhere else, and things get so specific. So,
really the case, yeah,
perfect sense. So tell me a little bit about the history of Guru. What's the origin story there? I love to ask companies about how they came to their names. And obviously, Guru has a pretty interesting feel and vibe associated with it.
Yeah. So essentially, our co-founders, Rick and Mitch, they founded a company called Boomi that was eventually sold to Dell early on. And they stayed with Dell for a while, but they noticed, as the team grew and grew, that there was truly a knowledge problem in the sense of like all their onboarding materials in one place, sales decks another place, product information another place. So a variety of different silos, and it was becoming just kind of a pain to manage or even know where to go to find anything. So they started, trying to fix that problem with software. And I guess they thought that Guru was an apropos name, seeking out knowledge. But yeah, that was really where it came from. It was really trying to unify company knowledge into one place and making it easy to access. And, when you can access knowledge quickly, I don't care what your job is, the faster you can get to know the information you need to do your job, you can be better at it and get on with your day.
So, that's so interesting. So they came from this background of having built an integration company. They would integrate different softwares together. Boomi's definitely come up in a couple of previous episodes. They get acquired by a major tech company, by Dell. Take that money and instead of, I don't know, maybe buying an island somewhere.
That's right. That's what I thought they would have done.
Yeah. They decided to roll right back in with another problem in the market. That's pretty cool. So I think just about all of our listeners have probably come across a knowledge base somewhere, whether they realized what it was or not. What is a knowledge base by your definition? What makes it such defined?
Yeah, I mean, in the simple terms, it's a wiki for your company's knowledge, right? It's the internal knowledge that you wouldn't be able to go and like just Google. It lives solely within your company, and there are a variety of tools that try and solve this problem, but really you find that a lot of different teams use different products for different reasons, and they keep information in different products, and then basically there's a disparity in the company of how you manage all things. And so what a knowledge base is basically, it's a wiki that you can use to find company knowledge, the stuff you need to know to do your job.
So it's more than, let's say, a Q&A or an FAQ where, that's more of sort of a defined methodology of presenting information. This is more of an environment of its own, kind of like you'd say, I've got a blog, I've got a knowledge base where there are these articles and other information stored that people can find through different menus and search features and access in order to make information available in a particular format for particular reasons.
Yeah, so think of like a product like Zendesk, right? Their bread and butter is making these really nice help centers for customers to consume, right, and self-serve. So it's really built for external consumption. A difference in the case of like Guru is a tool that's meant for internal consumption, right? This is what your employees are consuming to do their jobs. And it can be a variety of things. It can be specific to the job they're doing, or it could be like HR information they need to do to apply for benefits, so on and so forth. So it really is kind of a holistic approach to knowledge for internal team consumption.
So, and in the case of an e-commerce business, what would some of the use cases commonly be that would have a merchant, whether B2B or B2C, single channel or omni-channel, whatever they might be, how might they deploy a knowledge base? What would the use case look like?
Yeah, so support is obviously like a very, very heavy use uh, profession for when it comes to consuming knowledge. I come from a background of working in contact centers, and a lot of what your job is basically looking things up constantly. No one ever wants to be placed on hold because when they're placed on hold, usually you have a rep who's just pouring through. Depending on the company, it can be a binder or it can be a variety of different, repositories, or also they're just waiting for a message in either some kind of communication tool like Slack. So because they weren't able to access the knowledge they're seeking, they're taking time up. They're basically waiting, making the customer wait, kind of degrading the experience they have. So really, in the terms of B2C, whenever a customer calls in for an issue, typically, you help they self-serve, you help they go to the help site, but sometimes you just can't find what you need, and you need someone to help you. And product like Guru will help that rep find information they need to resolve the problem quickly. And this is good. I mean, obviously, you're doing that a lot in support, but even if you're on the phone and you're in sales, you need to pull up knowledge in the instance, right? Let's say someone's like, "Hey, why are you better than this competitor?" If you can quickly pull up knowledge and hit the talking points as to why you are in a battle card or something like that, it's another instance where consuming knowledge and being able to access it rapidly is beneficial. So yeah, it's really just trying to get to the content you need without making people wait or making yourself frustrated by being like helpless, waiting for someone else to help you.
So that's interesting. So improving the customer experience, obviously, always important. But I know, if you're employing a call center that's taking these calls and using these more or less, scripted answers or predetermined answers for different issues, you're typically paying by the minute. So the time that it takes to research out of the wrong tech stack, or as you were mentioning, things like binders, physical documentation, it's hurting you in two places. It's costing
absolutely.
you in the moment, and it's costing you in terms of that customer relationship and your ability to earn more business from that customer in however many myriad ways, whether by getting people have good reviews of your company or to come back themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a well-built knowledge base with quick access, you really can cut down resolution time. So your reps can handle more. Their job is easier and less stressful, and you can actually cut into burnout with that too. Just if the job becomes easier and they know how to self-serve as employees, they might feel a bit more fulfilled in their work.
Yeah. So you've got brands and manufacturers that have product, and so they probably have to provide a higher level of customer support in a lot of cases because regardless of where the product's bought, they hope. In many cases, I imagine that if there is an issue, that they get the phone call or email or whatever else, whatever other forms of communication. A lot of time, if you return product to store, it just gets written off. It's a terrible expense for that brand. They want you to reach out. Yep. They don't want you going back to Target or Walmart or Costco or wherever with that product. So I imagine that impacts the bottom line. Just in general, philosophically, being able to have good customer support right from the get-go.
Yeah, but everybody, no matter who you are, you want a quick answer. When you have a question, you want a quick answer.
Yeah. I suppose that keeps life simple. Then there are other use cases, though, that I imagine, that get a little bit more interesting because so in the e-commerce world, you've got users that are trying to understand different things that are happening with their orders, with their accounts. They need to update saved credit cards in the. I mean, you name it. That it's interesting. They're trying to get access to old orders or things, data that's not maybe easily available to them anymore. That over time, you wind up with more questions than people realize that need to be answered, and it's difficult to bring in any. I mean, it's a scalability problem. You can't just bring in new employees and expect them to know everything, especially multi-step processes that people need to be walked through.
Yeah. So another way that a lot of teams like use Guru is onboarding, right? So a lot of the times, if you don't know, like if you're starting a job, and if you don't know what you don't know, right? And so it's really easy to lay things out in Guru as far as like onboarding weeks 1, week 2, week 3, resources you'll need to do your job, and it's laid out in a way that it's easy to access. And one thing that we try and, as part of the tool itself, as we have what we call a verification engine. So, you do have these issues, right, where there's old material just piling up and it just becomes noise and you really don't know which way is up when you're looking for things. With the verification engine, you're able to assign content to either an expert or a group of experts that exist on your team. And they look at that content on a regular interval. So it's up to you what you make it, right? It could be a week, it could be 3 months, it could be a year, or you could set a custom date. But they can go in and say, hey, this is still relevant, this is still good. Or if it's not, they can archive it. And that way you keep your knowledge base alive and relevant, as opposed to letting things get super stale and not knowing what actually matters anymore.
Spring cleaning. I like it. I mean, that's just a problem in technology in the first place, whether it's email inboxes or ticket systems or, e-commerce systems, you just pile up data. And at some point, while it can provide a lot of insight, it can become unwieldy if you actually need to go in and deal with things on the micro level as opposed to the macro.
Yeah, it can be a nightmare. It's just plain simple.
Yeah. So now, outside of customer support, I caught that you mentioned sales as a department that in some cases can leverage the knowledge base data as well, or be the primary user in some cases. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned even before that, HR and other departments. I imagine that whether it's for internal training or for operations teams or marketing teams, that basically everybody needs to have some kind of a game plan. I know that in software development that it's so rare that there's full documentation on things that we talk to clients all the time that had a custom site built or had a custom application built, and whoever created that, or an integration. So talking about systems like Boomi had an integration built from one system to another. There's no documentation. There's nothing to go back to. There's nothing to train new employees on. There's nothing to show the next developer what was done, how, and why. So industry-wise, pretty important, I think. And sometimes, rather than creating just extremely long Word docs or Google Docs or whatever else, having things that are organized in a way that's more actionable is pretty important.
It's I've definitely been a part of companies like this, and it's because everyone gets along so well, but there's an oral tradition, and things get lost. No one's writing things down. Everyone just knows who knows it, and then they kind of remember and they go on with their day. Every team has content they need to capture, that they need to store, and sometimes it's easy not to do that, right? Especially when you're in, let's say, a chat like Slack or Microsoft Teams. You're chatting, you get your question resolved, and then you carry on. But a lot of times, it would be useful if you could capture that and capture it in the moment. So we actually have integrations, with Slack. You can, if someone answers a question in Slack and that's not documented anywhere, you can easily create what we call a Guru card. That's basically the building block of everything Guru. You can create it right from Slack, save that, and now it's accessible wherever you access Guru. So within Slack itself, within the web browser, an extension, or even in your ticketing platform. So it helps you capture knowledge as it grows in your company. But that being said, we talked about the support use case, finding answers quickly, helping customers resolve problems. But again, every department has stuff they need to take care of, right? So we do permission out Guru in a way to where every department can kind of manage their own knowledge base. It's all part of the same system, and you can access it all from the same system. But each department has their own agency to basically, create and save things the way they want. Because onboarding for a product is going to be different than onboarding for support, and so on and so forth. But this brings a nice way for you to see where it all can live in one organized knowledge base.
I like the theory behind the Slack integration because ideally, it's always lovely when you've got a culture of let's document this. I know at JetRails that's a really big deal. As web hosts, it comes with the territory. Uh, but thinking about some of these different departments, I imagine that's part of why some people keep these knowledge bases private, company facing only, because you wouldn't want your sales playbook making it out there in the world, or certain other data made available. I would think just as easily, though, that in a lot of cases that it makes sense to publish some of the information because you want the customers to be able to, to provide, self-service care, that you want them to be able to find the answer. They don't, especially, as new generations come up and they don't necessarily want to call or wait for an email response, or wait in queue for someone, that they would much rather. I think most of us would just intrinsically much rather have the answer readily available.
Of course. Yeah. No one wants to talk to anybody. They'd rather just be able to find themselves, right? Yeah. So a lot of teams, what they'll do is there's two ways. So we work really well with products like Zendesk that do external facing help centers. And you can sync that content directly into Guru. And if you're in a chat app or anything like that, you can easily reference that and then provide the customer with a link to the external facing documentation. But we also do have customers who use our API to basically create a collection that we basically call departments in the product, and name it the help center. And then they use the API to publish it to their own, their own in-house help desk system or help center. So there's two ways to go about it. You can definitely house the knowledge and push it out to external facing audiences. And we also, we have the ability in the product to make certain cards public. So kind of like with a Google Doc, if you set it to anyone can see this, you can do that with a Guru card, and you can send it out to customers as well. So we don't try and limit it too much. Obviously, you want to keep your things like finance information private, right? But then you want to keep your product information easy to access for customers. So
a user in e-commerce might add to different product pages links directly back to those cards that are going to come right out of your knowledge base.
Correct. Yeah. And by doing so with that, the verification engine I mentioned, sounds like a very fancy verification engine. With the ability to verify stuff, essentially, that all the content that is in your help site that your customers are accessing is verified. It's good to go because there's a team actively, making sure it's accurate knowledge. So it kind of takes a little bit of the stress away. And it also works in a sense of like, you might want to push this content into different platforms as well that aren't even public facing, like a learning management system. So those things can sometimes be a pain to update. But if you're pushing something directly from a verified knowledge base like Guru, that no matter who comes in the next employee class, that stuff is still good to go. You don't have to go in and fix it.
Okay, I guess that's a problem of distributed content is that if it's basically duplicated in too many places, then you've got to update it in each one of those places, as opposed to having a master record, updating the master record and being done with it.
Exactly.
And looking, I guess, more toward the long-term impact, what type of a net impact would you think that an e-commerce or similar kind of company could experience deploying a knowledge base? Has your team taken, a look at some of those, case studies, where users have really had a big net impact in their operation?
Yeah, so I guess if you want to, from like a support perspective, it's really easy to quantify, right? Because like those are things where you're constantly measuring metrics like resolve time and handle time, things like that. And so we definitely see, an uptick in, in decreased resolution time for support agents that use Guru. We do a baseline survey with our customers before we start to see like, where are you at now? Where do you want to be with this product? And we want to make sure that you're getting the value. So that's very quantifiable and it's easy to demonstrate. When it comes to internal consumption, it's a little different, right? Like no one's measuring how long it takes you, Robert, to pull up a Google Doc, how many times you click through other ones. So internally, when we look at NPS scores from our customers, it's employee satisfaction. It basically makes work easier and less tedious. When you can find things and essentially like not waste your time to try and
Mhm.
do one thing by trying to find the accurate information. You just
Well,
feel
and
better.
you
And
want the customer to be happy at the end of the day. I mean, I haven't met many people that are in customer facing jobs that want tasks to take any longer than they have to, because that leads to people on the other end being less happy and just a harder job for everyone.
yeah, exactly. I mean, from like a sales perspective, think of like you're trying to send out like a case study or something to a prospect, right? You can do that directly from within Gmail using like our browser extension. You could find the asset, link it directly, and you're good to go. As opposed to like going to a different place and trying to find the right one and then go link it back. And then it's more tedious and it seems like more labor intensive than it needs to be. And it lets you kind of just focus on your work. I think that any good knowledge base you shouldn't spend too much time in. I think it should be kind of passive. You should be able to easily get what you want and carry on.
No, that's a really good way of looking at it. And I know that there's a lot of outdated knowledge based tech out there, earlier generations. You were mentioning how your systems have these APIs and they're pre existing integrations. I know you mentioned a few already, like Zendesk and Slack. And what are some of the most common integrations that your team sees demand for? What integrations have you built that are really well utilized?
Yeah, there's twofold in integration. So there's things built directly into like a ticketing system like Zendesk, where you can basically have content suggested to you based off of the customer interaction. So you don't even have to search in some cases. But then we have other instances where we integrate as far as like syncing with outside content. So we sync with a variety of outside platforms, Dropbox, Confluence, Zendesk, Salesforce, so on and so forth. And the reason we do that is to bring content in that maybe a team doesn't have full access over. So for an example, let's say like a sales team buys Guru and the whole thing is like, hey, you know what, we want our sales reps to be accessing one place that's in their workflow. We don't want them to waste time going to different locations looking for things. That's great. So they move in all the sales knowledge into Guru. But actually the engineering team, let's say they're staying on Confluence, right? And they create content that the sales team needs to do their job. So how do you solve this, right? Does the sales team now need to go into Guru and into Confluence? This kind of like defeats the purpose. In that case, we have what we call syncs, where we can pull in the actual knowledge from, let's say, the engineering instance of Confluence. We can populate it in Guru. So now the sales team can stay on one tool, access it in the moment, and also trust that the engineering information is still coming from engineering. It's like not just copy and pasted. If they make an update in Confluence, it'll automatically sync to the Guru. So they're still using the up-to-date stuff.
Cool. And anything new coming down the pike? I don't want to ask you for anything proprietary or that we wouldn't be able to publish out to the public, but any new integrations or partnerships or anything that you think are going to move the needle?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that we're focusing on are like a product-led growth. We want it to be easy for people to start. You need someone to want to put in the effort to like making a knowledge base and recognizing that the problem. But we have things in the product that we're introducing. So different templates. So if you come in and you want to try it out for a marketing team, you can populate basically your own marketing collection, and we'll have a framework of what it could look like for you. We also just released company templates, if you will. So we have customers like Slack, Noom, Freshdesk. They all use Guru, and we've actually taken their templates that they use internally for their product knowledge or different use cases, and we've made them public. So you can actually go and stylize things the same way other companies do, companies that you know and trust. So we're trying really hard to make it accessible, make it easy, and help people not overthink getting their knowledge in the right place.
Cool. And, Matt, you've been generous with your time today. Before we wrap it up, any other thoughts, anything else that you think folks need to know about the wacky world of knowledge bases?
The wacky world of knowledge bases. Yeah, it's funny. Like it's not complex. It's like you want to be able to look things up. They're super important to have. It makes sense to have it in one place. Every other job I've had, it's been a nightmare to find things. Now that I've come to Guru, and have everything in one place, it's made things very simple. You can choose the knowledge base you want, right? But I would just say it's super important to make sure that you have one and to maintain it and care about it, because if your company knowledge is in order, it makes everyone's life easier, customer and internal alike.
Yeah, look, I will add on, for all of our e-commerce listeners out there, having knowledge and planning around your growth and stability. So whether it's what happens if something goes wrong on Black Friday, who do you need to reach out to? What's the plan there? What happens if there was a security incident or data breach? What's your plan? Um,
Yeah.
what happens if all of a sudden your stuff takes off and you hit massive demand, scalability issues. We've certainly seen that for a lot of industries in 2020 where business just boomed on e-commerce, and you can't always predict it. Makers of PPE weren't exactly expecting or folks selling bread makers, or I don't know, pick your
Right. Yeah.
your categories. I could keep
I think
rattling off
King
things.
King Arthur. I think they did all their sales like in 2 months. They usually do it in like 2 years. They
Yeah.
just because everyone started picking up bread. So yeah, things can happen.
Yeah.
And it's also important to have like a platform where you can easily like push content to your team as well. So that's something to consider.
Yeah. So, Matt, really a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Yeah,
Thanks
man.
for coming on and
Likewise.
sharing some great knowledge. To our listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We'll have more content for you very shortly. And stay safe, stay healthy, and happy selling.